what I'm going to do today is talk about the X-ray machine that I've got in and how X-ray can be useful. Basically how it came around to being built. Now I've got this iPad and I'm hoping I can just bring some images up here and this will work nicely. And look, albums. Okay, so a little about the clinic. Now I don't know how many people are going to see this, possibly not. You can't really see that at the back, can you? How far down can you see it?
Yeah, pretty good.
You can see it all right? Yeah. So there's me in the old adjustment room, which I think most of you guys have seen. And there's another one, just walking around, down the hallway. Okay. When we go to the X-ray machine, this is it. So what I'll talk about, first of all, is let's give a brief intro on what an X-ray machine is, what it does. Okay. So that's it in its final stage. You see it there? Final stage setup. An X-ray machine, believe it or not, people think you take X-ray. What do people think you take X-rays for? Fractures. Yeah. So you can do it for that. Anyone heard of like a chest X-ray? Mm-hmm. Anyone know what they've had a chest X-ray taken for?
You've got any congestion on your lungs, things like that?
Yeah. So soft tissue as well. So when you've got an X-ray, as you scroll through it, in fact. Have you got an image here? Actually, no, it's on the phone. It won't work. But if you go through, this is an X-ray. By the way, anyone have an idea what this X-ray is of? Well, that's very good.
It is, because I didn't say it.
It's a limb. It is. This is a lamb leg of lamb. Yeah, because what you have to do when you're actually setting up a X-ray machine to get the factors is you have fun. You put pictures on Facebook of you zapping a leg of lamb. And a leg of lamb has the same consistency and density of the human neck.
It's better than mint sauce.
Yeah, well, it's got a bit of bone in it, it's got a bit of tissue, etc. It's a shame I can't show it on a video, but basically through this, there's a wheel, I can pull it, and it scrolls through the density of the tissues. So it changes the contrast levels, which is like the white and the black, and then you can change your KVP. Well, you change the KVP on your machine, but you can change it here where you can pull it up and down, and it changes the grayscale. So you can get like the number grayscale basically from white to black, the number of levels of shades you've got in there. You can change that as well. So if you've got too many, you can't really differentiate the tissues. Too few, there's not enough in there. There's not enough information. So it's about playing with it. So X-ray also becomes an art. It's not just like push a button and that's it. For some people, it probably is. My standard is trying to go above and beyond. So one of the things that I'm doing when we finally get this concluded in the next few weeks is having a proper report. When you write up an X-ray report, it should have what we call the ABCs. So it should talk about the alignment of the structures in the X-ray, should talk about the bone density and the quality of bone tissue, and it should talk about cartilage as well. So whether you've got, say for example in the knee, you've got a meniscus. Okay, everyone heard of the meniscus? Yeah. ACL, people hear of ACL, PCL tears. So it should be talking about those structures as well. If somebody has an ACL tear, for example, or a PCL or cruciate, you can actually see swelling on the X-ray. So you won't necessarily see bones broken if they're not broken, but you will see swelling in what we call the fat planes around the area. So it can show stuff as well on an X-ray. What was I going to say? So yeah, so putting in these A, B, C's, also talking about the soft tissues, that goes into what we call the X-ray report. So we write out what we see. At the end, we put a conclusion. So based on the findings here and this, I suggest they have degenerative joint disease at the C7 level, and then at the bottom, further investigations. With that report comes the X-ray, the image, and on the image it should have the patient's name, date of birth, it should have the location of where the image was taken, and that's the main features. Now, sometimes when you go to the doctor and you have an X-ray done, this is an interesting thing. What happens when you go to the doctor and have an X-ray done? And well, you usually go to the hospital, right? Some people have it in the GP, very rarely. And you go to the doctor to get the findings. What do they say?
Everything's okay.
Well, they might say that.
Come through yet?
Yeah. But do they ever show you an image?
No. You have to get the results later, don't you, mostly?
Yeah, and this is the thing that kind of exasperates me a little bit, because information is power, and there's a big push in the health industry. We've got called the biopsychosocial model, okay? And basically what that means is that everything that happens to an individual is also, it includes the psychology aspect, emotions, what's happening to them. So you hear things like ME, fibromyalgia, you've heard of these kind of, those are bad diagnoses. That means they've been ruled out for cancer, arthritis, and everything under the sun, and the doctor hasn't got a goddamn clue what, excuse the French, is wrong with them. That's what it means. And it's in your head. Now, people's perception of pain is, we're not saying it's not real, but it's magnified by what you're thinking. So if you think about it, and you'll know people out there with fibromyalgia, when they're in a stressful situation, you'll notice their pain levels go up. Yeah? So within this model of looking at all these various things, you also are pushing back to the patient that they are responsible for their own health. The NHS obviously needs to do this because there's not enough money there, always the case we hear. But you should be responsible for your own health. Right? If I take you, for example, Paul, you've gone out, you've done the training, you've done the exercise, right? If you hadn't done that and you hadn't pushed yourself, you probably wouldn't be sitting here today fitter and healthier. You know what I mean? And that's what I propose as doctors, all doctors should do. So when you have their X-ray, they should share you the information, explain it. Here's your image, here's your neck. You know, for example, this is what I'm doing when I'm taking X-rays. These are the bones of your spine, and particularly this is where you have no wear and tear, and this is where you have a lot of wear and tear. And if somebody has wear and tear, I'll use this to explain it, but I use the image. You know, that doesn't necessarily happen all the time, which is a shame, and people get read back to them what's on the report. So you've got, and they'll literally read it word for word. And the concern with that is that if you gave the GP an X-ray, they wouldn't even know whether, and I've seen this before in Paul Hospital, somebody was looking at the X-ray of a neck, he was relatively newly graduated GP, and he had it upside down. Pretty shocking, but anyway. And they also don't have the skill set, and that's why it actually happens that way, so they can't read them, generally. Anyway, so that's one thing by and by. So explaining it, if you don't have the images, ask the doctor, can I see the images? Under the Data Protection Act 1998, you are legally entitled to get a copy of your images. Most people don't know that. That empowers you. So if you're not getting the information you want from the doctor, you've had the images taken, say, I would like to get a copy of my images, please. They will throw everything in the book while it can't be done. It is a legal requirement they provide it to you. There's no exception. Nada. It's under the General Medical Council's Code of Conduct. And they have 8 years in which to store those images. Or they have to keep them. So if it's after 10 years, they can say we don't have them anymore. That's true. But under that, they can. And they can legally charge you up to £50. So just do be aware of that. But to be honest, if you go to Nuffield right now, it's 130 quid for a cervical film, and it goes higher. So 50 quid isn't that bad. And that also asks for the notes, because if you ask for it all at the same time, it's still the 50 quid. So anyway, now, how does an X-ray machine work? Let's get back to that briefly. So you've got an X-ray machine, you've got the tube, which is, how much time have I got left, by the way? 2.5. 2.5, okay. So I'll go through now, if you can see that, right in the middle, or in the middle here, is what we call the bucky stand. Yeah, it's not playing with it. Okay, thing in the middle, you line the patient up against. The thing to the left-hand side is the tube. That tube on there generates an X-ray through a 400-volt kind of cable goes in. It boosts it up. The values you're talking about is about 90,000 volts, but it's going through in a fraction of a second, literally 30 milliseconds. So very, very fast. People think when they go in there and they press they call it a collimator, it's a light that comes out of the tube that gives you an idea where the X-ray is going to be. The person thinks they're being X-rayed, they're not. It's just a light, so Just be reassured on that. It's just a guidance, like when I walk out of the room, press the button, it like that, it's done, and it's over, and it just generates it spinning, and there's no radiation afterwards. This is not alpha or beta. It's not a nuclear power plant where it just keeps going. It's just done like that, so it's not much. In the X-ray room, though, I do have to protect everybody. We have to have a radiation protection officer come in. That has to be done every 3 years. It's a legal requirement, and there is about 400 or 500. No, it must be about 400 or 500 kilos of lead in the walls, at about $3,000. So it does cost a little bit to set it up. Apparently, that was the cheapest way to build the room. That excludes the build cost. So you find these things out as you go. The X-ray comes out, hits the tube stand. There's a cassette in behind it. I didn't bring one, but a cervical one. It's about the size of that. Okay, take that, and then you go and put it into that device there. And that reader costs you about, brand new, I've got a good deal on this, it costs about $13,000 just for that device. The tube stand and the bucky cost about $13,000 in itself as well. And there's the thing where you change the kind of values. Like that. So you've got to change it depending on the part thickness, because obviously some is bigger, it needs more punch to get through. Some is smaller, doesn't. And you've got to go through all that. So that's it. And then you get something like, if it's a terrible one, it's like that to start with. But because you can control it, you can get something like that. So that's the cervical spine. This here is called a posterior ponticle. There's a component up here. Ask a GP what that is. They probably won't have a clue. That's fine. They're not trained to do that. You know, ask them a drug, they'll be 10 times better than me, 100%. And like I said, you can see from this neck, it's actually a bit straight. It should actually have a bit more
Oh, reflex.
yeah, and that's it. Done. Anyway.
Well done.
Any questions?
You spoke about the report. I mean, does the machine do that, or is some actually?
No. This does that.
Right.
Can I ask you a question, Grayson? When I worked up in London for a time, I used to go into Barts and deal with a lot of doctors and people in Barts, and there were specialist people who just looked at X-rays all day. They kept them in a darkened room.
That's right, they do.
Big screens all up in front of them. The doctors will, the X-ray would take there, come in there, and they would interpret that.
Yep.
Do you have to have special training to know how to interpret what you see?
100%. If you go to a radiologist, you would argue that their level of skill set is higher. No doubt about that. That's why, if I'm ever concerned about anything, the great thing is I have radiologists. They're called DAC bars, and there's 2 of them down at my university, and I'm good friends with them. I know some guys in the United States. I have one guy who's my cousin's ex. And he writes up MRIs and he reads MRIs, and I mean I can read MRIs as well. But his level, they've got an MRI machine on site, so that's all he does all day long. So I can just email him an image. So connections, like I said, is very, very important. So, by the way, when the GP or the new consultant had the image upside down.
He was an Australian doctor.
No. He did have a radiologist with him at the time. It was in Poole Hospital. So that's why they have that in place, because if you're really good at something, do it. It would just be nice if your GP could just take a few X-ray courses every now and then. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Brilliant.
Right.